I don't write books to please my ego, to make people laugh or to entertain. I want to influence them. I want to get inside your skin, inside your brain, and alter how you look at the world. I think this change in your perspective and how you look and socialize and deal with people will radically alter so many aspects in your life.
All right, today's guest is the legendary #1 New York Times best-selling author of a string of books on the nature of power itself. His writings have become an intellectual buffet for those seeking power and influence, as evidenced by the fact that his work has become an integral part of the very fabric of hip-hop culture. He's been referenced in songs by Jay-Z, Kanye West, and Drake, to name but a few, and Busta Rhymes used his lessons to resolve a tricky issue with problematic movie producers. Fidel Castro has even been reported to have read his book, and his most famous tome, The 48 Laws of Power, is both one of the most requested books in the American prison system and one of the most frequently banned, along with one of his other books, The 33 Strategies for War. This may seem an overreaction to what are ultimately just books, but in truth, every one of his 6 books are razor sharp and dripping with usable insights. They are dark and powerfully revealing works that look at some of the most often ignored and harder to look at parts of human nature. Help me in welcoming the best-selling author of The Laws of Human Nature, the godfather of power dynamics himself, Robert Greene. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to start with, you take a default sort of negative view about our aggressions and things like that. What is your default stance on human nature?
I admit that I have a negative bias, but I try and make my books as objective as possible. But I think that we consider ourselves human. Obviously, we're human beings, but I don't buy that definition. I think that we're actually animals, that we have an animal nature, and that we have to become human. And we become human by overcoming some of these deep-rooted animal forces within us. These forces within us that we can't control, such as the fact that we can't control our own emotions, our own anger, our own frustration, or we feel envy, or we're caught up in the emotions of other people. I call those forces, primal forces, human nature. And I have 18 of them. And they can create sort of negative patterns of behavior, the dark side of what we see in the news, etc. And we all have them ingrained in us because the way we evolved millions of years ago served a very definite purpose for our survival as a species. But the savannas of East Africa is not the offices in Silicon Valley or 21st century America. The world isn't the same. We are not built to adapt to this new technological environment we're in. We still have that lizard brain, those animal parts of our nature. So my book is designed to confront you with human nature so you can begin to overcome it. So for instance, law #1 is about how we're basically irrational creatures. We think that we're rational, but really our emotions govern us. We feel something before we ever have an idea or think it. We have to become rational through this process that I lay out in my book. So I don't mean to say that we're negative, because humans are obviously incredible. Look at what we've created. It's outrageous if you think about who we were millions of years ago and where we are now. We're obviously capable of incredible achievements. We're also the most brilliant social animal on the planet. We're capable of cooperating and working on teams to a level that no other animal has ever reached. So there's obviously another side to the story. But to become greater, to become truly human, we have to overcome these forces that I lay out in the book.
What are some of the other primitive forces that are driving us, especially ones that people might not be aware of?
Well, I think we're kind of aware of it, but we don't see it in the same light. So for instance, we are built to constantly compare ourselves to other people. We're always thinking of what the other person has and how we are in relation to them. Are we getting as much attention as that other person? It started off when we were children. Are we getting more attention than our siblings from our parents? So we're continually comparing ourselves in rank, in power, in status to the people around us. And this is deep force within us, and it's constant every day, every moment. You don't realize it, but you're going through that. And social media, it completely exacerbates this tendency in human nature. And it's the source of envy, which I have a whole chapter on in my book. So that's one force that I talk about, and I try and show the roots of that, in our evolution. Another is the contagiousness of emotions, which is extremely powerful. We tend to think of ourselves as autonomous human beings, that we're independent, that I feel affection or anger or frustration on my own. We don't realize how deeply we are affected by the emotions of the people in a group. This is the viral effects. Emotions are extremely contagious. And I explain in the book there was an evolutionary reason for that. Before the invention of language, we humans had to be able to communicate to one another through just picking up the moods of other people. And if there was a threat to our group or our tribe, the ability to feel fear and anger together bonded us and helped us survive. But that doesn't serve much function in the world today, where viral emotions can be very dangerous and we see a lot of that on social media. So those are two of forces, I could mention, and there are several others.
So you've said that you often write from a place of anger.
I do.
What was the anger that was driving this book?
Well, but now my worry is that people are so immersed in their smartphones and their technology that they don't understand people. They're not observing people. And this has been documented in studies that young people, for instance, levels of self-absorption and narcissism have been growing steadily since the 1970s. We are the preeminent social animal on the planet. Our survival depends on how we relate to other people, whether we understand them on some level. And I find a lot of people are increasingly in the world are really bad at observing just basic elements in human psychology. The position I'm in now, I'm a consultant to a lot of very powerful, famous people. I'm not going to mention any names, but people fly me out to consult with CEOs, political people who are very powerful, and even in other countries. And the number one problem I find that they have is an inability to understand the people they're dealing with. They hire the wrong partners. They hire the worst assistants, who end up ruining their lives. These are people who are technically brilliant. They understand their field. They understand marketing, etc. But they don't understand basics about the people around them. And they make terrible hires, or they marry absolutely the wrong person for them in their lives. Their emotions, or their personal relationship bring them down. So this is like our Achilles heel, and I think it's gotten worse in the world today. So my anger was that people are so focused on technology, but that we need to focus much more on human nature, on understanding people. That's the primary skill that you need in life.
One thing that I thought was pretty funny in your book was like the biggest part of human nature is that we deny that there is human nature. I thought that was wonderfully ironic and terrifyingly true. And I want to know, because you said the purpose of the book is to give you a sense of who you are so that you can change who you are. But without that self-awareness, without going through the process of learning this stuff, you're just never going to be able to make that change.
Right.
So, okay, operating from the thesis that your book is designed to give me that level of self-awareness, as I go through the process of trying to tease out who I really am, how much of this is truly like just you were born that way, and how much of this is early childhood development?
Well, I have a chapter on character, which is an extremely important chapter. And what I'm trying to get at in there is that there is something deeply ingrained in each individual person, a particular individual nature that we all have, and that causes us to go into compulsive patterns of behavior. I have this problem myself. I notice each time I write a book, I'm telling myself, I'm going to make this book short. I'm not going to ruin my health. I'm not going to do so much research. And every goddamn time I still go through the same process. I can't break this pattern. Okay? And everybody has them. Where does it come from? Some of it comes from our DNA, from our genetics, things we can't control that we've inherited from our parents. Some of it comes from our early attachments. And some of it comes as we get older and we interact with teachers and mentors and various people who create a certain way we view ourselves. If people keep telling us that we're not really worthy, that we're not good students, we internalize that and we end up becoming like that. So it's a mix of things. You know, each person has a mix of these qualities, and you have to kind of untangle the various strands. And you're right, what I'm saying is you're a mystery to yourself. You don't know who you are. You have patterns of behavior and you're not even understanding that. You don't know why you're angry. You think you're angry because that person said something mean to you or did something wrong. But in fact, your anger probably stems from things from deep, deep within, from your childhood. And you're not reacting to that person, but to actually your parents and what they didn't give you. You know, the origin of wisdom, according to the Greeks, was know thyself, right? And I believe that very firmly, that knowledge about who you are is an end in itself and will help you in so many ways become that human being that I think we all have the potential to become.
So talk to me about self-awareness and how it impacts biases.
Well, you have to, see, my books, I try to be as practical as possible. I don't want to get academic. I want you to be able to actually use this knowledge. So I'm a great believer in baby steps, in learning how to do things on a daily basis. So normally when we feel an emotion or we have an idea, we don't examine it. We just assume that's you know, it's just natural. We came up with that on our own. I want you every single day to be examining yourself and to look at yourself. Why do I have that idea? Why am I feeling this sudden emotion? And it's not easy. It can take time and it can take a degree of introspection that you're not comfortable with. But if you begin to look at yourself and question, why do I feel this way? And examine it and look at perhaps other sources of it, then you can begin this process of understanding, instead of just simply accepting that you feel or have this certain idea. So when I write the book on human nature, I admit that I have a negative bias towards human nature. I tend to see the dark side in people. I tend to see their manipulative side, what they're trying to hide. That was the source for the 48 Laws of Power. That was the anger I felt then, that people weren't being honest about how manipulative they can be. So I recognize that I have this bias. I recognize that that's who I am. Instead of thinking that, well, I'm just brilliant and my ideas are always correct. So question yourself. Stop assuming that everything you do is so brilliant and smart and right. And imagine that maybe your ideas don't come from yourself. Maybe you're feeling some political anger or whatever comes from the fact that you're just assuming it from other people. You're following things on Facebook and you're getting swept up in some viral emotion. You want to think that you're completely independent and autonomous, but maybe you're not as independent as you think.
So how do you want people to use your book as a tool as they go through? What exercises do you want them to do? Because I think some of a lack of self-awareness is not just I don't want to do the work, the introspection. It's a not understanding the process of what introspection is.
But as far as the process is concerned, it's a daily thing. So first of all, the first and most important thing that you have to do is to come to admit, it's almost like an AA thing, that you have a problem. If you go through life thinking you don't have a problem, that you know who you are, that your relationships with people are fine, that everything is hunky-dory, then you're never going to be able to even begin to go into the process. So admit you have a problem. Admit you don't understand the people you deal with. Even your spouse or your children, they're mysteries to you. You don't really know what they're thinking. So admit that first. When you admit that, now you're motivated to try and learn. There are little steps you can take. I won't go through all of them. But the first thing is, if you take your wife or your husband, if you say to yourself, I don't really understand them. I think I do. But a lot of the times when you think you understand them, you're just simply projecting onto them your own emotions. Step back and say, today, I'm going to observe her, let's just say from my point of view, in a different way than I normally do. And I'm going to look at her nonverbal communications. And today, I'm going to glean one truth about my wife or spouse or partner that I had never noticed before. And I'm going to try and see perhaps get to the point where I can begin to understand her perspective. So if, for instance, there's an argument or a disagreement, here's another instance where you step back and you go, stop being so self-righteous and maybe try and take the step of understanding her point of view. So, so these are sort of baby steps that you take in life. You can use this in your office where you think you know your colleagues, but you don't know them, and they might be having thoughts about you that aren't very pleasant, that you don't want to confront. Step back and start observing them. And I have many, many examples in the book about lessons on how you can start observing people. So the point of this story was that humans have this ability to master this second language. Put yourself in the position of our earliest ancestors. I mentioned this earlier. They don't have language, yet their survival depends on getting along with the group and knowing, like, you're hunting and where is that leopard, what's going on. But you can't say anything, you don't have language yet. So your ability to pick up fear in the eyes of a fellow group member or to pick up excitement, your survival depended on it. So I maintain that our ancestors were virtually psychic in their ability to attune themselves to the nonverbal communication that people are constantly emitting. So the idea in this book is we humans are constantly emitting information about our real emotions. It comes out non-verbally. And you're not picking up these signals. You're so focused on people's words that you're missing this other reality, which is so incredibly eloquent. And I try and instruct you in the book about how you can become a superior observer of this.
I know recently you had a stroke, getting all over it with rebuilding yourself, but with a writer's mind, and so you're paying attention to what it takes and what you're going through. Yeah. Walk us through that. Like, what are you learning about that? What principles of the book are you applying to it?
Well, I hate to say it, but it was kind of a near-death experience because I was with my wife at the time, and she called the ambulance right away. I was driving. And if she hadn't called right away, I would have permanent brain damage right now. And I probably would have gotten in a very bad car accident. I might not be alive. So, the last chapter is a chapter about death, confronting your greatest fear in life, which is your mortality. I literally had to confront that. So the abstract words that I have about, confront your death, overcome your fear, suddenly became very real to me. And so that was one aspect of it. But literally, you lose control of your body. I'm a very independent person, very willful. I like to imagine myself like I can do anything I want. And suddenly I'm put in the position of being a baby, dependent on people to clothe me, to feed me. I can't walk very well. I have no control over my left side of my body. I wasn't an athlete, but I loved exercise, endurance exercise. Not all of that wiped away. So what am I going to do? Am I going to start feeling sorry for myself? And so I applied one of the things in my book, which has to do with the last chapter about death, but it also permeates through the book, is just sort of accept things as they are. Stop judging. I had to accept that this is a fact of life, and how can I make it into something strong? How can I turn this into a positive? I have a chapter on your attitude in life, how you can change your circumstances by changing your attitude. Your attitude towards life will determine what you get. If you're avoidant and hostile towards people, a hostile person will tend to create hostility around him. So how can I alter my attitude? And it's a struggle every single day. I have to be incredibly patient, and I'm not a patient person. It takes me 10 minutes to put on a t-shirt to be able to get my left arm through that sleeve. Damn it, I'm not somebody who's patient. And I've had to develop patience. I've had to overcome all of these sort of negative qualities in myself. So if I talk in the book about overcoming your own nature, damn man, that was fucking slammed into my face, right? I had to overcome my frustration, my lack of patience, my willfulness, the fact that I always have to do things myself, and then I had to confront the fact that I could easily have died, but I didn't. I'm alive, so I can learn from this. I'm learning a lot. and I'm going to rebuild my body. I'm going to rebuild it. I've come a long way, so like a month ago, I was pretty bad. I'm able to walk now fairly well. In 4 months from now, I'm going to be swimming again. In 6 months, I'm going to be jogging. I'm going to be back to where I was. Nothing will stop me. But I have to overcome all of my deficiencies and all of these weaknesses that I have built up over the years.
Yeah, that is, needless to say, that's a long, difficult road. How do you, or what tools do you use to reset your mind every day as you're going through this?
I meditate every morning. I've been doing that for several years, for 8 years now, religiously. And in those meditations, I confront myself. So I'm sitting there meditating, and my meditation is all about emptying the mind. But it's impossible to empty the mind. So as you're meditating, thoughts come to you, anxieties, worries, resentments. I've trained myself to question where they are. Each time I feel anger at my sibling or my mother or friend for saying something that I misinterpreted, I go, that's your ego speaking. These people weren't saying something that was personal. You just have your ego, which is always getting in your way. Question it. So question my impatience, my frustrations, etc. The meditation has really helped me. Accepting people and loving them for who they are is an incredibly liberating thing. Now, you can't do that for everyone. Some people are so toxic and ugly that you're never going to reach a point where you're going to love them. But you can understand them. And in understanding them, you don't have to internalize the pain they inflict on you. He changed his attitude towards people and towards life. And so your attitude will mean what you get in life, you know? You will sabotage yourself with your attitude. So if I got all bitter and railed against fate for making me who I am, for the stroke that ruined my life, that took away everything that I valued, I can't travel, I can't drive, I would become a different person. I would become somebody who limited my scope of activity. But by accepting it, by saying, I'm not going to let this happen, I'm going to accept it, I widen my scope of activity. I do things that I normally wouldn't do if I became all angry and avoidant and anxious.
Amor fati.
Yes, exactly.
Tell people what that means.
Well, it's a Latin expression that literally means love of fate. And it was created by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who's one of my great icons in life, one of my favorite writers. And basically his idea was that we humans normally go through life kind of not accepting things. We want things to be different from the way they are. We want to have a better wife or husband. We want our children to be better. We don't like the political system. We want this sort of utopia to suddenly come about. We want people to be different. We want this, we want that. And to Nietzsche, that meant you are anti-life. You are against life because life isn't like that. Life is a series of facts. Life is what it is. We've evolved a certain way. Your reality is a certain way. It is what it is. And by pushing against it, you hate life. You want to love life. You want to love fate. And what fate means, things happen to you you can't control. You didn't control who your parents are. You didn't control what city you were born into, what school you went into. You didn't control whether you were born rich or poor, right? There's much you can't control. That's fate. Accept it for what it is. Stop whining and stop going, I want something else. Embrace your world, your life. Our fear of death is probably the greatest influence on our behavior throughout history. We're the only animal that's conscious of our mortality. And it's caused an incredible reaction. We're avoidant, we're anxious. We invent an afterlife, a heaven where we'll all go, right? Or today, we never see death. We never see people die in hospitals. We never see the animals that we eat being killed. We have no confrontation with death personally in our life, completely disconnected from it. It makes us anxious and fearful, and that controls everything about our behavior. We become anxious and fearful about everything. So the ability to accept death and look it square in the eye and accept this is your reality, that you're not going to live forever, is very liberating. So amor fati is a step from turning your back, that's faced this way going, here's life, and oh, I hate it, I don't want it, blah, 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 to turning around and facing it going, I accept it, I love it, I embrace it. And it has a very powerful effect.
What is the calmness born of?
That I've written, this is my 6th book. The Laws of Human Nature was sort of like my ultimate, I like vomited out of me everything that I had built over the last 20 years into this one book, all the things I've learned, all my anger, I got it out into this one book. So if I die, I don't have any regrets. You know, yeah, I'd like to write a 7th and an 8th book. I have other ideas, but I could die and I'm okay. I lived a great life. And I talk a lot about that in Mastery and in this book, that the worst feeling in the world is to be facing death and to think, damn it, I've wasted my life. And I want people out there to realize that if you're 20s and your 30s, you don't want to reach that point. You don't want to waste your time and become 55, 58, have a stroke, face death, and what have you done? Nothing. You've moved from job to job. You tried this, you tried that with half an energy. You really have nothing to look back on. That's the worst feeling. So, you know, I don't have that problem, I don't think. So that's part of how I'm able to stay calm. But the other thing is you say, bring it on, what worse can happen? I've already experienced it, you know? I'm somebody who has a great deal of fear of death, and now I had to deal with it. So, it's all right. It's not that bad. I can handle it.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
My last question.
Yes.
What's the impact that you want to have on the world?
Well, I want to have the largest impact possible. So I'm grandiose, you know, which is one of the chapters in the book. You know, I'm an ambitious person. I don't write books to please my ego, to make people laugh or to entertain. I want to influence them. I want to get inside your skin, inside your brain, and alter how you look at the world. And so I believe from the emails I've gotten from lots of readers and people I've talked to, that my books have had that effect. That you just don't read my books, they get under your skin, and you're thinking about them years later. And I consciously designed that for that reason. I seduce you into following me. I tell you stories. I don't preach or tell you this is what it is. I tell you a story. Each chapter I begin with a story to gently bring you into my world and into my ideas. I want to get under your skin. I want to change how you look at the world, because I'm not doing that for evil purposes. I think my way of looking at the world will help you. I think that my perspective will have a beneficial effect on you. Maybe I'm just deluding myself, but I think that. And so I want the biggest impact possible. I want to change how you look at the world. And so with the laws of human nature, I want to change how you look at people. Normally, everything is personal. Oh, they said that. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, he likes me. I'm not getting attention. Cut that off. I want you to look at people as facts of nature, as things that, like a rock or a stone or a plant. This is who they are. And I want you to observe them and accept them for who they are and deal with them as individuals. You will be free of all that emotional baggage that you carry when you take everything so personally. I think altering your perspective, how you look at people, will have a radical influence on all aspects of your life. So I want to have the biggest impact that I possibly can, and that's how I try and design my books for.
I love that. Awesome, Robert. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Tom.
on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.